much memory, that would be reasonable to use. A video in there, no problem, etc. That's fine. But if you have like 20 videos sitting in the heap, okay, you're going to be a candidate to get blasted. Okay? So the other thing is, you obviously want other applications to have as much memory available to them when the user switches back and forth. If you've got a reputation as a memory pig, like, oh, when I run this app, all my other apps will, slow way down, oh, it's terrible, then on the App Store, people are going to say that, and you're going to get a bad reputation. People aren't going to want your application. So that's another reason not to be a memory pig.
So does Apple check this kind of stuff to see how much memory you use before they would approve an app? Is that a thing?
So the question is, does Apple go and check to make sure you're being a good memory citizen before they approve you? I would say, I don't know. I don't work for Apple. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there in terms of their approval process. My guess is if they ran your app and it just immediately ballooned up huge amount of memory, they would not approve it. That's just my guess. I mean, I wouldn't if I were them. And certainly apps that are out there that have a reputation of being big memory pigs, maybe when you submit your next version or something, they're like, wait a second, did you fix that memory thing? You know what I'm saying? It's common sense. Common sense. Okay, so that's that. Okay, now I told you I would talk about creation of the view controller, and so I'm going back and talking about it here, and I'm only going to talk about it briefly because it's really not super important, because view did load is where you want most of your initialization. But when your view controller is created, when it's pulled out of that storyboard and unfreeze-dried, your init method is not called. Okay, a different init method is called, the unfreeze-drying init method, which is a generic init method mechanism that we're not going to, well, we might talk about it in week 8 or 9 of this course. Not that important, but that's what Xcode uses to freeze-dry your app. So that init, you don't subclass that init. Okay, it's an init. I'm not even going to tell you the name of it. You don't subclass it. Instead, when something gets unfreeze-dried from a storyboard, anything, not just your controller, but even like a button or anything else comes out of there, this method, awake from nib, nib is an old historical name. You could think of it as awake from storyboard. This gets called, and you can put in here things that you might normally put in your init. Although again, your outlets are not set at this point, so you're better off putting stuff in view did load. Okay? But if there's some reason you can't put something in view did load, I can't even think of a good example why that would be, you can put things in awake from nib. Now, to make this a little more complicated, but also a little more correct, it is possible that your view controller could be created in code using alloc init. It is legal for someone to alloc init. Init is not the designated initializer for a view controller, but init calls the designated initializer. So it is legal for people to do that. Not going to happen in this class. Okay? We're going to make things out of storyboards for 100% of this class, so don't worry about it. But the designated initializer for UI view controller is init with nib name : bundle : okay? Again, historical reasons here with old nib files. And so to be correct, we usually like to call whatever we're going to call from awake from nib also in that init method. And so you use this little template where you have some method called setup or something. Awake from nib calls that, and then init with nib name says self super init with nib name bundle, because that's the designated initializer. Self setup return self. Okay? So if you're going to put awake from nib in there, go ahead and put this little 3-line init with nib name also in there, just to be correct. Okay? Probably not necessary in this class. I don't think you're going to need awake from nib in this class. View did load is what you want. Okay, so here's a summary of the view controller life cycle. It's instantiated from the storyboard, or someone could say alloc init. Okay? Awake from nib gets called if it came out of a storyboard. Otherwise, init with nib name bundle gets called. The outlets get set if it comes from a storyboard. Then view did load is called. Then when the geometry is determined, view will lay out subviews, and view did lay out subviews. There should be no colons there. I don't know what that's a mistake. Get called. Then view will appear gets called. Then if the geometry changes again while it's visible, view did will lay out subviews, and view did lay out subviews will get called again. Okay? If there's auto rotation, you also get those auto rotation things, but don't worry about those because you're usually doing what you want to do in view did layout subviews. Then when your view controller goes off screen, it'll get view will disappear. Okay? If you have a low memory thing at any time going on there, you'll get that. That could be while you're visible or not. And that's it. That's the view controller lifecycle from start to finish. Okay? All right, so let's see a little demo of using the view controller lifecycle. So what I'm going to do is that outline button we talked about before. Let's make it so the outline button is itself outlined. That would be kind of a good UI. Okay, so it's kind of a little more indication of what it does. Well, the question is, if I have this outline button right here, how and when am I going to outline it? I can't do it in Xcode, unfortunately, so I need to do it in code. But I want it to be outlined when the thing first comes up, and I want it to always be outlined. So that's a one-time initialization thing that it obviously has to happen after my outlets are set, because I need to be able to talk to this button. So let's make an outlet for this. I'm just going to control drag here. I'm going to call this the outline button. Okay, and I'm going to take view.did_load. I'm actually going to move it up to the top here. Okay, so there's view.did_load. And I'm going to do exactly what it says here. Do any additional setup after loading the view. This should say typically from a storyboard. It's funny that that has not changed. I mean, storyboards have been around for, I don't know, iOS 4, 5, 6, 7, something like that. They're still saying from a nib. But anyway, view.did_load is the place to do this. And all we need to do is set the attributed title of this button to have the attributes of outline. So how are we going to do that, okay? And this is important for you to pay attention here. You all look awake, that's good, because your homework that's going to be assigned on Wednesday is going to require this. You're going to have to set attributed title of a button, okay? Because your cards are buttons, unfortunately. They won't be buttons the week after that, but they're buttons right now, and so you're going to need attributed strings to display what we want to do next week, and so you're going to have to set attributed title to button. So let's talk about how we do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say ns mutable attributed string title equals. So I want to get the title of this button as a mutable attributed string so that I can set the attributes to be the outline attributes, that stroke width thing. So the way to do that is I'm going to say ns mutable attributed string alloc init with string self.outline button dot current title. So whatever's on there currently, which is the word outline right now, I'm going to use that. And then that's it. That's all I'm going to do there, just so you show you how to do this way. I could set the attributes there actually, but oops. Did I get that right? Okay. So now I have the title as a mutable attributed string. So now I can set the attributes in this title. Okay, now this title is an ns mutable attribute string that I just created. It's a local variable. It's created with the button's title, but it's a local variable. So let's go ahead and set the attributes we want. Okay, again, it's very similar to this down here. In fact, I'm going to just copy and paste this and make one small change. Okay, so here instead of the -3, okay, I'm going to make it 3. And that's going to make this outline thing be outlined with no blue in the middle. Okay, so the foreground color of this button is blue, or whatever the default is black, but I'm going to make it so it's outlined with nothing in the middle. The other thing is I don't really want this button to be black, okay, because buttons are not black. Now, what color are buttons? Okay, and this brings up another interesting thing we really haven't had a chance to talk about, which is the tint color. Okay, and some of you have discovered this on your own because you didn't like the blue tint on a green background in Machismo, and I applaud you and your UI instincts to go searching for a way to change that. And the right way to change it is there's actually a global tint color, a tint color for your entire application, and you set that by going to your storyboard. So you have my storyboard selected over here, and if I go to the little area here that has all my attributes inspector, if I click the leftmost one, which is the file inspector, it's inspecting the storyboard file, you'll see there's global tint. Okay, so global tint affects all clickable things in your app everywhere. Okay, so you could pick a different color than blue, and we do that. The other thing is individual elements like UI buttons, they also have a tint color. Now usually you don't want to set them separately, although a couple people noticed what seems to be a bug in the simulator, where if you set the global tint, it's like it draws improperly segmented control in the simulator. I haven't heard back whether it does it on the device, but so the workaround was to set the individual tint color. So you can set tint color individual items, or you can set it at the storyboard level. Here what I'm going to do, I'm not going to set it, but I am going to get it. I'm going to get the tint color, because whatever this tint color is, I want that to be the color that I'm stroking it with, the outline color. So that is going to be self.outlineButton.tint color. Tint color. Okay? Understand what I was doing there? So I want it to stay blue, or whatever this color is, but I want it to be outlined only. And then the range, I need the entire range of text. In other words, I have this mutable string title here. I want the entire thing done. So I'm going to use ns_make_range. And you're going to find that for C structs in iOS, there's usually an ns_make whatever you want that will make the C struct by letting you specify the members of the struct. So in this case, a range has a location, a starting location, which will be 0. And it has a length. Okay, which is going to be title length. Okay, so that makes a little range. So that's going to set the entire range to have these attributes. Okay, now I have the title I want as a mutable string, but I need to set this back on the button. Okay, because I've only done this as a local variable right here. Because there's no mutable attributed string in button like there is in text view that you can just modify. You have to get it, make a mutable version, edit it, and then set it back. And the way we do that is self.outlineButton set attributed title for state, UI control state normal. Okay, so it's just like set title, but it's like attributed title. Okay, so let's see if that works. Okay, and it did. So you can see the outline right there is outlined. It's not awesomely outlined, or it's kind of hard to see that it's outlined. I might want to go back to here and set this, for example, this outline button, instead of being just the system font, maybe I want this to be bold system font, which will make it outline a little better. So let's go to here, inspect it, and in the font here, instead of using the system font, I'm going to use the bold system font. And now when I run, it'll look a little bolder. So it's a little better, a little easier to see the outline. Okay, and it's still a button. If I click it, it still outlines the text. Okay? All right, that's all I wanted to show you there. I'm going to show you another view controller lifecycle thing. But first, let's do a couple of slides. I want to show you one other thing, which I promised I would show, which is this radio station thing. So the way of communicating between objects in a blind, structured way, which we refer to as this radio station thing from the MVC, is called notifications in iOS 7. And we're only going to talk today about how to tune